हेलो, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। रिज़वान अली एक दफ़ा फिर अपने चैनल वेडी आर मीकम से आपके लिए लेकर आए। इस दफ़ा स्कूलिंग का आपको पता है, होम स्कूलिंग और जिस तरह की सिचुएशन चल रही है ऑनलाइन लर्निंग की, कोविड सिचुएशन के बाद से जो लोगों ने अब फीलर लिया है एक ऑनलाइन लर्निंग का, और ये देखते हुए कि अब हमारे बच्चों को चीज़ें समझ में आ रही हैं, दे आर गेटिंग अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ कि किस तरह से ऑनलाइन स्कूलिंग या ऑनलाइन क्लासेस या डिस्टेंट लर्निंग चलती है, और किस तरह से सिर्फ एक लेक्चर से चीज़ें ग्रैब की जा सकती हैं, बजाय ये कि स्कूल की तरफ जाने के, कन्वेंशनल स्कूलिंग की तरफ जाने के, और उसमें इतनी फ़ीसें पे करने पे। तो तो इस वजह से जो लोगों ने अब एक्सपीरियंस किया है ऑनलाइन लर्निंग को, लोगों का रुझान अब बढ़ता चला जा रहा है डिस्टेंट लर्निंग की तरफ, और वो भी एक्सपीरियंस करना चाहते हैं कि ये ऑनलाइन लर्निंग और होम स्कूलिंग और ख़ास तौर पे अनस्कूलिंग कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं क्या। हमने अपने बचपन से देखा है, हम स्कूल्स भेजते हैं बच्चों को, लेकिन जो प्रॉब्लम्स हमारे साथ पेश आते हैं उसमें करिकुलम का इशू आ सकता है, उसमें टीचर्स का इशू आ सकता है, उसमें स्कूल एनवायरनमेंट का इशू आ सकता है, उसमें ये पॉसिबल है कि हम चाहते हैं कि बच्चे ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा रिलीजियस वैल्यूज़ को हासिल करें या वैल्यूज़ गेन कर सकें स्कूल जाते हुए, और या अच्छे नेटवर्क में अपना सोशल नेटवर्क अच्छा बना सकें, उनको स्कूल में बच्चे अच्छे मिलें और जो आगे जाके उनके लिए मददगार साबित हो सकें आगे के फ्यूचर के लिए। ये सारे फैक्टर्स हैं जिनको देखते हुए हमारे कंसर्न्स होते हैं। अब जहाँ पे करिकुलम फ़ेल होता है और जहाँ हमें लगता है कि ये चीज़ नहीं पढ़ानी चाहिए या इससे बेहतर भी चीज़ें पढ़ाई जा सकती थी, या टीचर्स से हम आंगी ना हो या टीचर्स की कैपेबिलिटीज़ पे कुछ डाउट्स हों, तो ये यकीनन को पेरेंट्स ये देखते हैं कि फिर हमारे पास ऑप्शंस हैं क्या। उसमें से एक जो बहुत बड़ा ऑप्शन निकल के सामने आ रहा है कुछ अरसे से, वो है होम स्कूलिंग या अनस्कूलिंग का। पाकिस्तान में तो इतना कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है, लेकिन अगर हम वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज़ की बात करें, ख़ासतौर पे यूएसए की, तो तकरीबन 2 मिलियन बच्चे जो हैं इस वक़्त होम स्कूलिंग या अनस्कूलिंग की तरफ हैं, जो बिल्कुल स्कूल नहीं जाते। या तो वो पार्शियल होम स्कूलर्स हैं या बिल्कुल अनस्कूलर्स हैं, पार्शियल अनस्कूलर्स हैं। अ, दुनिया भर में होम स्कूलिंग पे कोई पाबंदी नहीं है, अलावा 2 कंट्रीज़ के, जर्मनी और स्वीडन ऐसी कंट्रीज़ हैं जहाँ पर आपको बच्चे को स्कूल में रजिस्टर करवाना लाज़मी होता है। लेकिन अगर हम स्वीडन और जर्मनी के एजुकेशन सिस्टम की बात करें, तो ज़ाहिर है वो हमसे बहुत आगे हैं, और उनका अपना करिकुलम या अपना एजुकेशन सिस्टम इस तरह का डिज़ाइन होता है कि उनको गालिबन होम स्कूलिंग या अनस्कूलिंग की ज़रूरत ना पड़े। लेकिन बाकी तमाम कंट्रीज़ में होम स्कूलिंग लीगल है, और बहुत से लोग उसको परस्यू भी करते हैं, और उसमें परस्यू करने की ख़ास वजह, जिस तरह हमने पहले भी डिस्कस किया, कि रिलीजियस फैक्टर होता है, बुलिंग का फैक्टर बहुत ज़्यादा है वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज़ में। फिर इसी तरह से करिकुलम से पेरेंट्स सेटिस्फाई नहीं होते, इसी तरह से टीचर से सेटिस्फाई नहीं होते, एनवायरनमेंट से सेटिस्फाई नहीं होते, जो वैल्यूज़ मिल रही होती हैं उससे सेटिस्फाई नहीं होते, तो वो रुख करते हैं फिर होम स्कूलिंग की तरफ या अनस्कूलिंग की तरफ। होम स्कूलिंग या अनस्कूलिंग भी कोई इतना आसान काम है नहीं, जितना हम सिर्फ उसके वर्ड्स पे बात कर लेते हैं, क्योंकि उसमें कितनी ज़्यादा मेहनत करनी पड़ती है, कितने ज़्यादा पेरेंट्स को इन्वॉल्व होना पड़ता है अपने बच्चों के साथ, और ज़ाहिर-सी बात है उसमें कुछ डिसएडवांटेजेस भी अपैरेंटली नज़र आते हैं, हम भी उस पे बात करेंगे। मिसाल के तौर पे सोशलाइज़िंग कैसे होगी, कॉन्फिडेंस कैसे आएगा बच्चों में, कॉम्पिटिशन कैसे सीखेंगे बच्चे। तो इन तमाम फैक्टर्स को ही आज डिस्कस करने के लिए हमारे साथ एक फॉरेन एक्सपर्ट मौजूद हैं, सू पैटरसन। इनका भी हम तारुफ करवाएँगे। इसके साथ हमारे साथ मौजूद होना था आज क्लिनिकल साइकोलॉजिस्ट डॉक्टर सोबिया आफ्ताब ने भी। अनफॉर्चुनेटली जो कराची में पावर आउटेजेस का सिलसिला जारी है, आज भी जो कराची के बेशतर इलाकों में अभी तक लाइट मौजूद नहीं है, तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली उसकी वजह से आज डॉक्टर सोबिया आफ्ताब हमें ज्वाइन नहीं कर पाएंगी। लेकिन ये इस सेशन को हम लिमिट नहीं करेंगे यहाँ पे, अगले सेशन में भी हम इंशाल्लाह इसको कंटिन्यू करेंगे, क्योंकि एक बहुत बड़ा टॉपिक है और बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस हैं पेरेंट्स के हमारे साथ, और लोगों के जो होम स्कूलिंग की तरफ आना चाहते हैं, लेकिन ज़ाहिर है उन्हें पता होना चाहिए कि ये चीज़ इतनी आसान है नहीं। हर कोई इसको कर नहीं सकता। इसमें सक्सेसफुल स्टोरीज़ भी बहुत ज़्यादा हैं। फॉर एग्ज़ाम्पल अगर मैं बात करूँ प्रेसिडेंट अब्राहम लिंकन, एक्ट्रेस एमा वॉटसन, ये लोग ऐसे हैं जिन्होंने होम स्कूलिंग की और दे हैव बीन सक्सेसफुल। लेकिन हमारे पास फिर ऐसी भी एग्जांपल्स हैं जो होम स्कूलिंग नहीं कर पाए, स्टार्ट किया और उनको विड्रॉ करना पड़ा। तो उसके कई सारे रीजंस हैं, कई सारे फैक्टर्स हैं। इस्लामिक पर्सपेक्टिव के लिहाज से भी देखें तो 7 साल की 8 साल की उम्र में अब कहा जाता है कि जी नमाज की पाबंदी होनी चाहिए, कुरान की पाबंदी होनी चाहिए। तो ये जो शुरू के 5-6 साल हैं इसमें बच्चों को बिल्कुल ओपन छोड़ा जाता है, क्योंकि वो ऐसा एज या एज स्लैब होता है जहाँ बच्चे के जहन जो है वो ग्रोथ की तरफ होता है। तो वो काफ़ी चीज़ें खुद ग्रैब कर रहा होता है। अब हमारे यहाँ क्या नॉर्म चल पड़े हैं कि हम 2-2.5 साल की उम्र में बच्चों को स्कूल में एडमिट करवा देते हैं और फिर ये समझते हैं कि बच्चा जो है वो स्कूल से सारी वैल्यूज़ हासिल करेगा। प्रैक्टिकली एक बहुत ही अजीब सी चीज़ लगती है, क्योंकि इतनी छोटी उम्र में कैसे बच्चे सीखेंगे, कैसे चीज़ों को ग्रैब करेंगे। तो मेरे ख्याल में जो ये मेरा सिर्फ एक राय है कि बच्चों को इस इतनी छोटी उम्र से एडमिट करवा देना स्कूल में कहीं कहीं भी अक्लमंदी की निशानी नहीं है। खैर, फिर हम दोबारा आते हैं होम स्कूलिंग अनस्कूलिंग की तरफ। फिर इसके बाद हमारे साथ अभी थोड़ी देर में ज्वाइन करेंगे हमें अदील अज़हर, टॉप आरजे, अवार्ड विनिंग आरजे ऑफ पाकिस्तान। उन्होंने रिसेंटली अभी होम स्कूलिंग स्टार्ट की है और उनका एक्सपीरियंस कैसा है होम स्कूलिंग पे, उनसे हम डिस्कस करेंगे। लेकिन पहले हम रुख कर लेते हैं सू पैटरसन का। हेलो सू, हाउ आर यू?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad we're not having a storm.
Yeah, but it was heavy storm here in Karachi. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for honoring us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you are welcome. As we discussed earlier, sorry if our general discussion will remain in our local language, our national language, that is Urdu. But whenever we communicate with you or whenever we have any questions, we will definitely transcript into your mother language, mother tongue,
Thank you.
that is English.
I
So,
could pick out some words that you were saying, but I was like,
okay.
oh.
Okay. So, Sue, there's not a huge following of homeschooling as far as Pakistan is concerned. There are many people here in Pakistan who want to start this homeschooling, but unfortunately, there are not many sources available in Pakistan to do so, and many people uh, just do not want to focus, or they do not have any leverage or any experience obviously, so that they can start this homeschooling instead, and they switch from conventional schooling system towards homeschooling. So my first question to you is, why conventional schooling is not feasible for the students and kids?
Well, I think that when we think about unschooling, which is such a different word from what a lot of people are familiar with, and then the familiarity is the problem really, because we're familiar with conventional schools, we're familiar with dividing everything up into subjects and having everything compartmentalized. But we know that before kids go to school, they learn, and there's a little history and a little art and a little math and a little all woven in. And we know that after people leave school, nobody comes at you with a worksheet to say, okay, here's the math time, here's the history time. It's all woven together. So this school experience of dividing things into compartments in this conventional, very familiar way is not the natural way that we learn. That when we think about little children and then when we think about ourselves as adults, we know that humans are hardwired to learn. We know that we're naturally curious. And so what unschooling does is taps into that. Instead of laying an expectation of you must learn this at a certain age and this at a certain age, we've noticed, especially as now we have a lot of grown unschoolers, you don't have to learn it. Nobody comes and says, what year did you learn to read? At what age did you learn your times tables? Nobody asks that. And yet we're so frightened. There's a lot of fear mongering from a school perspective of that you must learn things at certain times. And we found that you don't. And that really, if you learn things when it's in context, when you're in your life and you have a need for it, you remember it. How many of us have learned things that we forgot? because there was no context. So when you have this full, rich life with your children and you're having experiences and conversations and you're expanding on things they're interested in, those are the things they remember. And instead, those conventional school subjects would become almost roadblocks or speed bumps on a road to slow you down when you didn't even need it. That's how I would explain it.
Great.
So I guess
So
I should also add in
so
unschooling, we don't do quizzes, we don't do grades, we don't divide things into subjects, and the kids turn out fine.
So we will later discuss what are the different methods we for this homeschooling and unschooling.
Okay.
School is normally the institute where we try to educate our children, obviously, and in schools, uh, teachers are there to educate our children. Similarly, in unschooling or homeschooling, parents are there to teach the children. What specific is the difference between homeschooling and unschooling?
Right. Well, I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you asking how can parents be teachers? Is that what you're asking?
No, no. My question is just like in school, there are teachers who educate, who transform values into our kids. Similarly, in homeschooling or unschooling, there are parents who transform values to their kids, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
So, what actually the difference between homeschooling and unschooling? What actually the difference between homeschooling and unschooling?
okay, homeschooling is duplicating school at home. It's still continuing with those subjects. It's still teacher driven. It doesn't care so much about whether the child is interested in a particular topic. It has a scope and a sequence that it's trying to get through, and it works its way through, and so the child must conform to the curriculum that's chosen. Whereas in unschooling, it's more learner driven. Instead of being a teacher driven approach, the child expresses interest in things or is exposed to something because it's happening in your community now, or it's happening on the news and they hear about it, or they've seen something that was entertaining on YouTube, and you kind of keep going with that. So it's different in that it's not laid out ahead of time because you're staying tuned into the child. Whereas with homeschooling, it's all laid out ahead of time. But you're expecting the child to conform. And we all know our own school experience, how often we were staring out the window or not paying attention or something. That's because the learner's not being taken into consideration the same way it happens as an unschooling family. They pay more, they come to the situation from the learner's perspective than bringing it to the learner from the teacher's perspective.
Okay, so actually, what you are saying that on unschooling, we do not force, as a parent, we do not force what we want to transform into kids, but kids come up with themselves and see what their interest and passion is towards, and they keen the support and help from the parents.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's not a hands-off thing. It's not like parents go do their thing and kids go do their thing. It's a really involved situation where the parent is listening and watching and seeing what does this child need, and then also aware of the community and resources that are available just because you have more life experience as an adult. And so you can bring that to your child. And we all know that sometimes we bring something to our kids and they're like, yeah, we don't care. And
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
okay. That's just data for you to know, all right, I thought this was interesting, but maybe they like this other aspect of it. And so we're constantly, pivoting and shifting so that we can, understand better what our children are needing, and how to bring those resources to them in a way that they'll be excited about.
So it means that through unschooling, kids explore the creativity they have within themselves. right? And
Right.
if we want to have schooling instead of homeschooling and unschooling, then there will be the killing factor involved that kills the creativity factor that has with the kids, and kids have to go through the other kids what school is teaching and teachers are teaching. This is what you're saying.
Um, yes, the children with unschooling are more exploring their world, and the children that choose a homeschooling approach get to explore their world after they've finished all their studies. The studies that the parents have decided, or that some other powers that be have decided that all children must learn a certain thing at a certain age. And so unschoolers start to think, why? Why do they have to? Why does it matter? Why am I making my child cry so that they can write something when they don't have to right now? Their brain is learning something else, or their brain is focused on something else, or their skill level isn't there yet. We don't have to push them and prod them to do things that they're not naturally moving in that direction. Does that answer you?
Okay. So Sue, yeah, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So is it are there in certain types and different types and methods of doing homeschooling or unschooling?
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways that, people can duplicate school with homeschooling, and just like get the kids up at 8 a.m. and start their classes and do that. And that is a really tough workload on the parent. And it's also not even that efficient way. It's not an efficient way to learn. Realistically, when you do a school at home approach, you're taking the pieces of school that are really only there because it's a system that they're trying to move 30 kids from point A to point B, but you only have a couple of kids. So you don't have to bring home the system to learn, because like I said before, we're hardwired to learn. So other families take pieces of school and then do other things that they think are more, they might do a little reading or a little math on a schedule, where they might go to museums or watch it virtually until the pandemic is over, or go hiking, or look at the excuse me, the changing seasons and have conversations about science and take a more relaxed approach. So that's usually called eclectic, because they've kind of taken a mix of things. And so there's also, there's a variety of, when you look online, you can look up homeschooling methods, and there are all kinds of ways, because that's the thing, that once you bring your kids out of a system, then you can choose what you want to do. And a lot of your choice is going to have to do with how much you personally think about how do children learn? Why does this matter? And when you have those kinds of questions, then you can answer them in a way that's not driven by fear, where you're not thinking, oh, they have to learn this or they won't get into college, or they have to learn this or they'll be perceived ignorant around their cousins, or something like that. So when you have fear that's telling you, do this, do this, do this, I would just invite you to examine why. Why does that matter? And why, whereas unschooling, we prioritize the relationship between the parents and the children, because we know, and research supports, that when a child has a safe, nurturing environment, they learn more. When a child has a lot of anxiety, they close up and they don't listen and absorb as much. So we try to create an environment that's more conducive for learning. But every family is going to do this in a way that works for them. And I will say that how we started isn't necessarily how we finished. Parenting, everything, it's a process. We learn, and we're like, oh, that was so important to me 2 years ago, and now it's not that important anymore. And that's okay, because we're all learning and growing together. Just like the kids are, so are we as parents. We just need to be able to think about, why does this matter, and is it really important in the moment, and how does it impact our relationship with them? Because when our relationship is good, then they listen more. When our relationship is not so good, then they don't listen as much. So if you look at it from that perspective, there's another reason you might want to choose to unschool. But it's okay to choose to unschool a little. Some people do that. They choose they're terrified about reading and math, and so they hold tightly to that, and then they unschool the rest of it. And I would recommend that if that's how you feel, then just move in that direction and stay open to the idea that you might change your mind. You might start to feel more comfortable. You might discover that the reason you're so fearful about some of those subjects is because of the way it was taught to you as a child. So why would you want to duplicate that? So that your child will end up with the same math phobia that you have? No. So instead, it would be important to listen to other unschoolers and to see how does math naturally move through our lives, And I don't know, just fine, toss that out there.
So tell me, is there if we compare schooling with unschooling, do we have to have? I'm talking about the parents. Should we have enough knowledge of certain subjects? As you know that as the kids grow up, they beside their skills and beside their passion, they have to learn certain specific subjects like mathematics, or as a language English, or science. So how the parents come up with the solution for these subjects while doing home unschooling?
I remember when we first started, I was really afraid about the teenage years. I was really afraid about, what about these hard subjects? I didn't do that well in algebra. And so
Yeah.
I was worried. So I get it. I understand the question. What I can tell you about with my kids, who are now 31, 29, and 26, and they did have an unschooling approach to their childhood as well as their teen years, that what they did was they were learning things that happened in life, that they were learning practical application of math, not necessarily math from a worksheet, but they had to figure out taxes, or they had to figure out percentages for sales, or for, buying different things, or tipping people, or, math wove through. There's a reason they say that you need to know the basics, because the basics happen in our lives. So when you say, oh, can you help me figure out how much this is? Then they can do it. They don't have the math phobia or the math hang-up that we might have from having had the school experience. So for those harder subjects, if you feel like you can't do it, you don't have to do it. You can find a tutor if your child wants to do something like that. I don't know if you have things like community colleges. We have like a lower, I don't know if it's lower, but it's not the university level, but they take community college classes and they can transfer over to the university. And a lot of unschoolers use those community college classes as kind of a transition. One of mine did that. He took a bunch of classes at a community college level and then transferred in as a sophomore to the university level and never had to take the SAT or the ACT because he was a transfer student. So those kinds of things are possible too. The other thing to remember, everybody doesn't need physics. Everybody doesn't need algebra. My daughter, who's an actress, didn't have any subjects like that until she went to a community college and took what they call like developmental classes, which is remedial. She said, I traded 12 years of doing acting and one show after another, and voice lessons and dance lessons and all the things I was going to need for my career. And then I took 3 semesters, and nobody asks me what the quadratic formula, nobody asks me those kinds of things. So I just think that if we really get honest with ourselves and we think about our adult lives, what do we need? Do we need really all of those things. Now, a child that wants to be an engineer, they've already shown you. They've been building things with Legos. They've been building bike ramps. They've been doing things that are real life application of those math skills. And so then when they go to take an abstract class, they're like, oh, that's the formula for that. Now I get it. Because they have this pile of knowledge that they can hook all that abstract material into. So I don't think parents have to be able to do all of those classes. And there are resources in the community that if they do need them, they can tap into those resources. And then as parents, we just kind of have to look at, do they really need it? So, and there's no finish line. You don't have to get it all done by 18. If all of a sudden you have a child that is still playing video games and doing all this stuff as an early teenager, they may not choose it until like 18. They might decide, oh, I kind of think I like this area. Oh, I need a college degree for that. And then suddenly they start thinking the maturity has kicked in, and you can still be there as their resource person, not necessarily as their algebra instructor. You can be there to help them find the resources they need. There's things like Khan Academy. There's things like OutSchool. There's a variety of things online for ways that kids can get that information if they need it. I kept talking, and we were joined by...
I do that. The reason being that there are very few sources available in Pakistan, unfortunately. For example, you are talking about the community colleges. There is no presence of such colleges in Pakistan. So what do you suggest the people who want to have switching from unschooling towards homeschooling when they want to graduation? Obviously, they must have some degrees to move forward. So what will be your suggestion for this transformation?
I would say if as an older teenager, not as a younger one, but as an older teenager, if they decide that they really think they want to go to college, they could take Khan Academy classes. They could take virtual classes, online classes that help them learn the things that they need to be able to take the college classes that are necessary. I know unschooled kids who got an SAT or ACT prep book, and just, they were 17 years old and they just kind of worked their way through it. They're like, I don't know what this is. I don't know. Let's look it up. And so they, together with the parents, they found something that explained it. And then they did fine on the SAT and ACT and went straight to the university. So it's just that parents are told that they have to do all of this prep work, and it's really not necessary.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you suggest? What is the age slab that is important and feasible for the kids, for the parents to have unschooling or homeschooling their kids?
What was the first part of the question?
What is the age? What is the recommended age slab?
What ages for kids?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
When should you start?
Huh?
I'm sorry. Basically, he's talking about...
Adeel Azhar has just joined us.
Let me interfere. Yeah. Oh. Okay. What I understood, I'll give my introduction and everything later on. But since ma'am is there, so basically, what Rizwan you're asking is, at what age a child should be? We should bring a child towards homeschooling or unschooling. That's what you're saying, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I think
when should you start? At what age?
As soon as possible.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think it's too late if you're just discovering this and they're teenagers. I don't think it's too late, and I don't think it's too early. I think that any time that a child has this opportunity to explore and learn and have their own interests valued, so that they can have initiative. So often we read things about internal and external motivation. That if we've been in school and we only do things for an A or for a gold star or for a teacher approval or a parent, whatever, then all of a sudden that internal motivation starts to fade away. And then we as a society say, why won't they be internally motivated? Well, we've conditioned them not to be. We've conditioned them to be waiting for someone to spoon feed things to them. So if you have this opportunity to have your child learn things that interest them, then you're giving them a leg up in life. Then they don't have to wait and relearn it later. Have a midlife crisis to discover what they were actually interested in. They were moving in that direction for all of their childhood. So no specific age. I think any age it works great.
I agree.
Okay, so there are certain critiques on this homeschooling. For example, let me start with how to cope up with this socializing factor in school. Obviously, kids interact with each other, they gain confidence there, they feel the competition there. So, how to cope up with such matters?
Are you asking about socialization and how do they learn to adapt within the community, or how do they make friends,
Yes, yes,
or
and
both,
competition as well.
or all of it? I think we have to remember that just because a child's desk is next to somebody else's desk, that does not make them friends. And just because their last name starts with the same letter and they sit near them or they're grouped together, that's not their friends. Friendships come because of shared interests. And so when you have children that are in homeschooling or unschooling, they have hobbies, they have interests, and they make friends based upon that. And when they have those kinds of friendships, then they learn those basic interpersonal skills. And this really makes them mad at me. Or this, I have to learn how not to get so angry. And they're going to mess up. And that's okay, because that's how you learn. And so what starts as you learn social skills within the family, and then you expand out and expand out and expand out, but you're expanding out with people that share an interest with you. I mean, sometimes you just it's who you saw in the library with you. And or when they're little, they make their new best friend on the playground. Not so much as teenagers. You can't take a teenager to a park day. And now with the pandemic, we're not doing that at all. But you meet people based upon shared interests, a lot like how we do it as adults. So only in school do we group people by their age. Nobody says, I need to hire a secretary, I'll only take a 33-year-old. We don't do that. And so in school, everything is really segmented by age. And that's so that the system runs smoothly, not because it's best for the learner. Because you know that if your child is interested in the solar system and they're 8, and so is a child that's 12 or 5, they could all have great conversations at a planetarium or on something happening online, that they would have this shared information, this shared relevance to their life. And then that's how as adults, you end up making friends with people that are all different ages. And so that's what kids can do too.
And what do you say about competition?
I think school really amplifies competition and makes it more important than it needs to be. And I think that sometimes competition is put into a child's life when they're too young, when they're still very unsure. And that, I think that it can sometimes be really damaging when we all of a sudden set up all of this competition on things that didn't need to be competitive. That wouldn't it be better for them to work on cooperative things instead of competitive things, learn to work together, and then not care, have competition with yourself of, did I do it better now than I did it before? Then am I better just because I beat that kid? And that's not necessarily a healthy way to even grow a community. I think that can be detrimental. That we all have a little competition. Just I think human nature, we feel a little competitive, but I think that schools make that worse and put us into situations that we didn't need to be competitive about. What do you think about that? What do you think about competition?
Okay, you are asking me.
Yeah,
competition,
I
for example, actually it has become a rat race, unfortunately, and every kid is following the number games. His number is higher, why not mine? And kids are having a psychological pressure as well because of the same competition. And you are absolutely right that we are not instilling the values the kids must have in order to have this competition, or in order to have a socializing factor involved when they are with their parents instead of going to school. So you are absolutely right. I think we should. I'm not a homeschooler father right now. I want to have homeschooling for my kids or unschooling my kids, but unfortunately, there are certain factors, there are certain constraints. Uh, Not every father or every all parents can do so. Adeel Azhar is a very new entrant to this domain, to this environment. I think we should involve and we should have an interactive session, especially when you are as an expert here and Adil Azhar as a new entrant here, and I am as a learner right now. So is our audience. So I think we should involve Adil Azhar. Adil Azhar, what is your experience? Sorry, Sue, we have to have this conversation in Urdu so
That's
that we
okay.
our audience must understand it as well.
That's fine.
अदील कैसा एक्सपीरियंस है न्यू एंट्री पे? अ, इतना आसान काम है नहीं जितना लगता है, लेकिन इतना मुश्किल भी नहीं है जितना हमने बना लिया है, जितनी
Yeah.
हमने डिपेंडेंसी दे दी है स्कूल्स पर, और स्कूल्स के हालात हमें पता हैं क्या है। तो कैसे ख्याल आया? आपके 2 बच्चे हैं, मुझे पता है दोनों की क्या सिचुएशन है, उस पे हम बाद में आएँगे। प्योरली अभी जो
Yeah.
मेरे ज़हन में सबसे पहला ख्याल आता है कि मैं होम स्कूलिंग स्टार्ट कैसे करूँ? कहाँ से स्टार्ट करना चाहिए? यही सारे पेरेंट्स का क्वेश्चन होता है सबसे पहले।
Okay. First of all, Rizwan, thank you so much for inviting me, and my greetings to ma'am as well. And listening to you speak for the past, like say, 10 minutes, it was just like a reflection of what me and my wife. In fact, it was my wife who was the one who convinced me to go ahead with that, because in a country like Pakistan, this is a pretty it's a pretty risky move, and it's a move which is against the societal norms in Pakistan. A child is supposed to go to school, especially if you are from a upper middle class family. I mean, of course, a lower middle class family can bypass the schooling system. The children get into the work and the child labor stuff and all. But when you are in the middle class, the child is supposed to go to the school. I mean, explaining people that there is something called homeschooling is a pretty tough ask. So listening to you speak right now, it just felt like the reflection of our thoughts and all about competition, about the age, when to start and stuff. So thank you so much for all the enlightening thoughts. I was just going through your profile on your website right now, and I think we have found, me and my wife. My wife would be more excited that we have found a good resource we can come back to whenever we are stuck on this
Oh,
thing.
absolutely. I
So
would
thank you
love
so
to
much.
talk with you anytime.
थैंक यू। रिजवान, आपके सवाल के जवाब के ऊपर देखिए, सबसे मुश्किल काम पेरेंट्स को अपने आप को समझाना होता है। दैट्स the most difficult thing, is to convince yourself that what you are going to do. See, every parent wants the best for their children. वो चाहते हैं कि the best. I mean, people want their child. I mean, I've stood in the lines early in the morning at 5 a.m. just to get the admission form of a school where my wife wanted my child to go to. I mean, it didn't make sense to me what I was doing, but I mean, I just did it because I wanted the best for my children. And there's so many. I mean, again, not just in Pakistan. Why just Pakistan? Everywhere in the world. I mean, people want their children to go to the best private school as long as they can afford it, the best university as long as again they can afford it. And they think that's the best for their child. So this one, coming to your point, of course, सबसे important चीज वालदेन को अपने आप को convince करना होता है कि वो जो करने जा रहे हैं वो उनके बच्चों के लिए best है। आसान नहीं होता, बहुत मुश्किल काम होता है। I think, Sue, if I'm not mistaken, we might be the fifth or the sixth generation that actually has been going to the school regularly.
Yeah,
Because before that, there was no concept.
it's a new
Yeah,
experiment, really. It's
yeah, absolutely.
it's not
Because if we go back, yeah, please carry on.
no, I was just saying it's this idea of sending children to school instead of letting them learn in a more natural way. When you read more about it, you discover there were some reasons for that had more to do with society and the economy than
Yeah.
they had to necessarily do with is this. I mean, it was often better for children than a lot of situations, but in the end, the
True.
system ended up becoming way more important than the child.
राइट सो रिजवान सबसे पहले आपको अपने आप को कन्विंस करने में अगर आप कामयाब हो गए ऑफ कोर्स you must have talked with Sue about the pros and cons. I will share my perspective because we are a pretty late entrant into this homeschooling thing. I mean, let me be very frank about that we got frustrated by the whole schooling thing because of some peculiar needs, some very special needs of my elder son. And we really felt that the conventional schooling system is actually not fulfilling that need that the child has. Or if I could say in Urdu, एक तशनगी उसमें रिजवान रह रही थी. हमें लगता यही था कि यार जो हम चाह रहे थे उसके लिए हासिल करना बच्चे के लिए या जिसमें वो भी इंटरेस्टेड था वो उसको वहां पे मिल नहीं पा रहा था. It wasn't an easy decision for us to go for homeschooling. It wasn't an easy decision for my elder son, who was very literally attached to the school because Ahmed is on the autism spectrum. He's a high functioning autism boy. He's on the Asperger's. I won't call it a disorder, but he was on the Asperger's condition actually. So he just realized that he's surrounded by the kids who he thought were his friends, which as Sue just said, that a child sitting beside you doesn't mean that he's your friend. So Ahmed thought that the children that he's playing around, he's roaming around, is his friend, but he faced a lot of bullying that we never got to know about. And that's something when he told us when he was alone or we were having some deep conversation. And there was so much reading between the lines that we did through which to realize that the child is actually getting bullied a lot at school because Rizwan, if you have seen Ahmed, because he's appearing on my YouTube shows and all,
I
he's
have
a
met,
different kid.
I
He's
have
a very
met him.
special.
He
Yeah,
is. He is
yeah.
special. Yes,
You've met him.
no
You've
doubt
met
about
him.
it.
He's he's 13 now. He's 13 right now,
Okay.
and and he's got his areas of superior strength. I mean, he's very fast in few things when it comes to learning foreign languages and all. He's very smart. I was just telling about recently about in my radio show as well that he's learning Mandarin these days. He's learning Chinese, and he's doing
Oh, wow.
pretty. He's doing exceedingly well in that. Before that, he was learning he was learning German, and when he changed his school, when he moved to his last school, they started teaching German to him, and he was so good that he was doing pretty well there because he has this natural inclination towards learning foreign languages. But it was in the second year that he started hating that subject, and the reason he started hating that subject is because the other kids just could not keep up with Ahmed's speed, and the teacher just kept teaching the same thing for year one, year two, and even the year three. I think he have had enough, and perhaps German, which a couple of years back used to be his most favorite subject, actually became his most hated subject because he said the teacher is just teaching the same thing. And I think this was one of the triggering points for us. I mean, we went to the school and we had a word with them, and he said, "Why don't you start teaching him the advanced level German? Why can't the teacher spend an hour extra with Ahmed after school, maybe during the break hour, during the let's say some subject that maybe Ahmed is too good at. I mean, we are willing to pick him up an hour after school, no issues at all. But just give him that opportunity. But then the financial things come up. The teacher can't stay late. Blah 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 blah. So we just thought that it would be better if Ahmed would be studying at a pretty at a customized environment. Of course, the commitment of the partner who's willing to stay at home. I mean, of course, I was just reading a comment on the YouTube chat where somebody said that in the middle class families, the financial considerations and the wives are working and all. And yes, I think these are some very serious considerations about homeschooling. But I was lucky. I have got two jobs. Like I do the radio, and I've got my job in the company where I work for. And my wife, she's a homemaker. She stays home, and she took the responsibility. So that doesn't really mean that I'm like I have no responsibilities on my own. I've got my own responsibilities. It's like they say in Urdu, "Tali dono haath se bajti hai." You clap from both hands. I mean, if you're trying to clap from one hand, it just won't work. So it's a Rizwan, coming back to your original question. It's a very it's not an easy decision, especially in our environment where you are answerable to the society, you are answerable to your family, and you are
मैं
answerable to
इसमें
your
ऐड
kid.
करवा
You are answerable to your kid as well. जी.
इससे पहले कि आप कुछ ऐड करें, मैं इसमें कुछ ऐड करूंगा और आपका क्वेश्चन का जो आपका जवाब है उसका यकीनन आंसर इस क्वेश्चन का भी होगा कि यहाँ तो स्कूल इतने बड़े बड़े ब्रांड्स बन गए हैं, और खास तौर पे मदर्स के लिए बात करूंगा, कुछ जगह फादर्स भी इन्वॉल्व होते हैं। सोसाइटी में रहते हुए मदर्स का जो फोकस होता है कि यार ये स्कूल नहीं तो ये स्कूल नहीं तो कोई और स्कूल नहीं। जैसे आपने 5 बजे जाके किस स्कूल का आप जिक्र कर रहे हैं वो मैं समझ सकता हूँ, और 5 बजे क्या लोग तो
बिल्कुल.
रात के 2-2 3-3 बजे भी जाते हैं। और
या
मेरा एक एक मेरा यूट्यूब सेशन इस पर भी होगा कि किस तरह से स्कूल्स ह्यूमिलिएट करते हैं पेरेंट्स को एडमिशन के वक्त। इस पे भी मैं इंशाल्लाह एक सेशन करूंगा, इसमें यकीन क्योंकि आपका एक्सपीरियंस है तो हो सकता है मैं आपको
बिल्कुल.
दोबारा बताऊं। लेकिन ये
Why not?
एक टैबू है कि यार क्या मतलब तुम्हारे पास फीस देने के पैसे नहीं है, ये क्या स्कूल छुड़वा के घर में बिठा के
बिल्कुल.
खुद पढ़ा रहे हो। इस पे भी जरा कमेंट कीजिएगा, और खासतौर पर मदर्स के लिए।
No, this is the first question. I mean that people ask you that can't you afford to send your kid to school, which is why you have moved to homeschooling. In fact, there was. I mean, I don't blame a very good friend of mine. I mean, very kind of him and very nice of him that he actually offered me a financial sort of a help if I can't make my. I said no. Alhamdulillah, Allah has been very kind. The Almighty has been very kind of me. I can afford the fee. I mean, and I can send my kids to the best schools in Pakistan if I wish to, but I just don't want to. Or I mean, this is I would say it again comes back from the same mindset which has developed in the past 150 years. See, human history, documented history, goes back around 6,000-7,000 years. And imagine the schooling. The schooling, as we know right now, wasn't a part of the human evolution. Yeah. The human did not evolve that way. It is only, as I said, it was only after the assembly lines came in, and that we realized that if we can build a Ford through assembly line, if we can build a Glock revolver, a rifle through assembly line, maybe we can build our children education through assembly line model as well, and that's what the schooling is all about. So this is the thing. Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, ये एक है रिजवान, पाकिस्तान में लोगों को समझाना ये बहुत मुश्किल है। और जो पहला सवाल पूछते हैं वो ये कि जिसको अभी आप लोगों ने डिस्कस भी किया कि यार उसकी सोशल स्किल्स का क्या होगा, वो तो पीछे रह जाएगा। He will not have any friends. He will not know how to interact with people. And I contradict these people by saying that by homeschooling, you actually give more time to your child to socially interact with people with a different set of people, with a different group of people, and perhaps at times with more mature people and people bigger. I mean, there are children who are just not okay with the people of their age because they are perhaps they are mentally very they're older than their age. So who says that a 10-year-old child should be talking to 10-year-old children? I mean, if he can have an interaction with a 13 or 14-year-old child in a setting like a swimming pool where he goes to for the swimming coaching, or he goes to play cricket or football, and he interacts with older people, his personality grows faster. So, I mean, honestly speaking, once you make up your mind, आप अपना एक बार अपना दिमाग बना लें कि मुझे ये करना है, you will start noticing so many positives that you would actually regret. Why didn't your parent think about homeschooling you? Why did you end up going to school? There are so many subjects. Sue was telling about her daughter who's an actress and all. I mean, what would she get by learning about theory of relativity? I mean, that's so unfair to her because her and Rizwan, we are from the same city, right? So we are taught a regional language here in Pakistan, in Karachi school, not in the entire country school. It's a language called Sindhi. I mean, all due respect to my Sindhi friends and all, and I've got so many friends. I mean, I'm absolutely not saying, but that language is not going to help me out in my life at all. I mean, we start studying Sindhi from class 3, and we give a board examination. Yes. And we give a board examination in class 9. So that's like 7 years of Sindhi education. So every day you have got 1 hour in your school which is dedicated to Sindhi, and then you, uh, how much did we learn at the end of the day? I think we can speak just 1 or 2 lines, maybe one poem that we learned back in class 6 or 7. Just imagine, if because I like economics. I mean, I've studied economics as a subject. Just imagine the opportunity cost of that 1 hour for 7 years. What if you had taught your child maybe to speak Chinese, not Sindhi, because Chinese is what the world is going to
or
speak in
any
the few years.
subject, really, or any subject that they had an
Maybe
interest
playing
in.
music,
You could have had more
playing music.
economics. If you could have
Oh
had an
yes,
extra hour
absolutely,
of what would that have done for you as an adult? You would have such a
absolutely.
body of knowledge.
Maybe Sue, how about teaching them how to do coding? I mean, computer programming. These are the things that are going to help the child out. I mean, even if you are an actor or an actress, even if you are a dancer, coding is a skill, and I really feel that in the next maybe in the next 10, 15 years, coding is going to be an essential skill.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah, I mean,
there's
it
a
would be
lot.
taught like, yeah.
I have a lot of parents that are very concerned that their kids are playing too many video games or that they are
Yeah.
on technology too much. And what I'm seeing for grown unschooled kids, so they're kids to me, but they're in their 20s now, they've gotten jobs that their ability to use technology, their comfort with using it, has really given them all kinds of opportunities. More and more businesses want to gamify systems within their company, and who better to know
Yep.
how to do that than the kids that played a ton of video games? So it's almost
Absolutely,
like if we
totally agree.
stop with our fear about stuff, people were afraid of books when books first came out. They said, "Oh, well, people won't have conversations if we have books." And then there were, so it's always the way with progress that people get afraid of it. But the reality is the world is moving in that direction, like you're saying. And so if you can help the kids, just let them keep doing that, because they're the next generation. They're going to make that happen. So let them be really good at the things that they enjoy so that they can bring that into the world. I was thinking too, when you were talking about the school experience, how the school works for the bell curve, where they're just going for the middle. So if you're really behind or you're really ahead, too bad. We're going to shave you off to a nice mediocre. And that's not our goal, right? Our goal is not mediocre. We want them to develop their strengths. We want them to, and not to necessarily worry about how does that compete. Because that's the thing too about your friend that wanted to loan you money to get him into a good school. We're so indoctrinated in this competition that we have to get in the best school and don't let him get ahead, and what if he falls behind, and how does he compare, and that's just this thinking that I believe schools have kind of played with in our brains that have gotten us to think a little bit more along that way than is actually necessary.
All right. I think one of the participants actually wants you to include the questions in the program. So how about taking those?
Okay.
And I think I also want to learn from Sue's experience, actually listening to those answers. But you are the host, Rizwan. It's your call.
Yeah.
So discussing
The very first question is in front of us. The first question is on the screen. Sue, can you read it?
Yeah, I can. Discussing social and psychological impacts. I think that, like we've already said, that being able to interact with the situation right there, and not as you learned about that your son had bullying and you didn't even know it was happening. Whereas it's not that there's not bullying in the homeschooling world in real life. Things like that happen as kids are interacting with each other. But you as a parent can have some input. You can say, "Oh, well, have you looked at some other options on how to deal with this?" And you can give them more help in those situations than just they're all off together, all the 10-year-olds together, and Lord knows who's influencing who, Instead, they get to have good influence. They get to have good social help with how do you deal with that, or you know how it felt when somebody did that to you. Now you don't want to do that. You just get to offer those kinds of suggestions that a 10-year-old is not going to offer to another 10-year-old. So there are advantages, I think, to social and psychological aspects of children and their learning. Kids detached from a friendship, they're not detached. They have opportunities to make friends in sports and in other activities that are available. My kids were in theater, they did 4-H, it's a thing where it started as a thing where people in the country, they did things with animals, but then it was a countywide thing where they started to performing opportunities and leadership opportunities. They did community service all the time. So they interacted with other people. And, the list goes on and on with ways that they interacted socially with other children of a variety of ages. And that helped them.
I'm so sorry.
Not lacking. Everybody's afraid, and there's just a big misconception that homeschooled kids are lonely sitting at a kitchen table with their parents. And that's not what it looks like at all. I can remember my kids saying, "Why do they call it homeschooling? We're hardly home at all." So I don't think friendship and social. I think that's a mischaracterization. It is sometimes true that people make the assumption that kids are struggling socially, when they homeschool. And but I would say that we don't have a corner on that kids struggle socially in school too. It's just we don't see it. We don't get that. We don't have that kind of data. I remember when my son was in a scout troop. I don't know. It was a Boy Scout troop, and they were the most poorly behaved children I'd ever seen in my life. And they were all school kids. And it made me realize kids just are kids, and so different kids have different skills. And in schools, we tend to be really into who's the popular one, who's the smart one, who are all those things. And it really is that competitiveness, and it is not healthy. It's what brings us into this whole worshiping celebrity instead of worshiping, not necessarily worship, but instead of valuing who are you and what do you do and what do you have to bring to the world and what's unique about you and how awesome is that. So, in schools, it's about conformity. It's about don't step out of line. And if you step out of line, then you just put a big target on your back for bullies. And sadly, sometimes the bullying comes from the teachers. Sometimes the bullying is harassing because you didn't conform. And so then it pushes everybody to this conformity is the priority. So I don't think that's a healthy social or psychological situation. So maybe that's what we need to do. We need to list out all the social and psychological things that are wrong in a school system so that you can see that nothing is perfect, but you can look at things more realistically instead of defensively. Often people are defending their position because maybe their kids have to be in school, or they don't really want to look at it, or they grew up with that kind of a mindset. And so you see that, you think, are they afraid? What are they afraid of? What are they defensive about? And then, because realistically, we should all be happy with everybody doing whatever they need to do for their children. We should be glad that parents want to do that. Instead of like, oh, well, what does that mean about me if I don't? And so then we get all that defensiveness, and it doesn't serve you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue.
Rizwan, if I may aid, for sure. Because the most critical thing is that number one, about the friendships and all. I mean, who says that you make friends only at school? I mean, a few of my friends who used to live in my vicinity, in my area where I used to live, Rizwan. We have got the same circle, and Cheyenne is one of those guys who's a very good friend. and he used to be my neighbors. I mean, I never went to school with Shayan. In fact, he was a year junior to me. So even if we had gone to the same school, he would have been in a different class altogether. But we had been great friends. I'm going to turn 40 next month, sorry. So we've been friends for 40 years now. So see, let's just come out of this thing that it's the school that helps you make good friends. No, not at all. It's the people with whom you are in congruence in your thoughts and in resonance with the way you think. That's where you get the. I mean, one of my best friends is my cousin who has turned 50 last year. I mean, he's 11 years older than I am. But when him and we just like two boys were sitting and discussing sport and chatting about stuff, discussing politics. I mean, there was no chance that him and I could have been in the same school. I mean, when I would have started my school, it would be almost finishing that. So saying that the child won't be able to make friends because he doesn't go to the school, I think it's a nonsense argument. Even the person who makes this argument, if he will sit down at some quiet time with a cup of coffee in his hand, will himself be able to debunk this whole ridiculous theory. One. Secondly, social interaction. See, your child's confidence isn't built by bullying younger children at school. No, that doesn't make confident. That makes him a bully. And he's going to act the same way throughout his life. His social confidence builds when you let him interact with people all around. When you step back as a parent and you let your child handling a real life situation. Let me just give you some examples. I'm not saying we are perfect parents or anything. No, me and my wife would never ever claim that. And I think there are no perfect parents out there. But we try our best. We try some novel and interesting things out. Last year, same time, so we were driving around almost the entire USA. In fact, a year back, we were in Dallas. We had in fact, I was just going through. Yeah, we drove. That's brilliant. So we were staying with a very good friend of mine in Frisco, right outside the town. So we drove from Waco, and also there were only few places. I think we were driving around for around almost a month, and I think I drove around 7,000 miles there in US, and we had a great time. USA is a great country if you want to travel on road. The interstates and everything, and the cheap hotels and the deals that you get is brilliant. So what we were doing is that we were letting our children. I mean, if you were staying at a hotel and let's say there was something that I was supposed to do, let's say interact with the receptionist or housekeeping or the room service, we let the children handle that. Okay, you go. Even my little one who's 6 now, who's 7 now, who was 6 last year when we were there. And we said, okay, if you want that, you want water, you go call them up. You go to the reception, you get this done. And you want to buy something, you go to the grocery store. Okay, I'm staying in the car. You just go inside the shop and you get your stuff done. So this is how, I mean, even now that when I go for grocery and all, whenever one of them, because I do my grocery very early in the morning because there are hardly people there, and that's the best time, I think.
Right.
But whenever I'm there, I try my best to let the children handle stuff. So that is how the confidence actually, that's where the confidence comes from. Yes, we were pretty skeptical about our elder kid handle these situations. But my wife, I have to give credit to her that she's becoming with time, she's becoming more confident about letting him go outside and let him interact with people, because that's where you get your confidence from. I mean, just giving the credit to the schooling system that they are responsible for making help your child make friends, B, help him become socially more interactive and socially more confident. Is, I think it's, as I said, it's ridiculous. And I think a very good point came to my mind. It just to skip whenever it comes back. I'll definitely share that one of the experience from our own life. But I think there are a few more questions here. So if we can include the one.
I just wanted to add to what you said, that children make friends based on shared experiences. So if they're shared experiences, they're commiserating over a horrible teacher, and then they become friends. Yeah. They friends-ish, and or they're commiserating over a soccer coach that's not. So then they have, but it's a shared experience. So your child, as a homeschool kid, is out in the world having shared experiences with other humans, and so they have all kinds of opportunities then to grow a friendship from it. Whether it's relatives or neighbors or whatever. I was just going to add that my son, when he was a teenager, he went to the dentist, and I thought, and so it was during the time that you don't go in with them. They get old enough that they have to go by themselves. And so he went into the dentist, and he's in there for a while. And then the dentist comes out and whispers to the receptionist, and they point to me. And I'm like, oh no, what happened? And so he comes, he goes, well, I want to talk to you about your son. And I'm like, okay. And he said, I'm so impressed. I'm like, with what? And he said, he saw these photos on the wall, and he started asking me about a trip that I went on, and was like, is that near Japan or where exactly? And so he was engaged. He wanted to talk to me. Normally teenagers come in here and they look down and they grunt answers and they don't say much. But he just saw me as another interesting human to talk to. And I think that that's an advantage for kids that have been unschooled or that they're out in the world, is that they don't say, I can't talk to them, or the grown-ups are the enemy. They don't have any of that baggage. They just find interesting things about the people that cross their paths. And so that was what had happened. I just thought I would share that one.
I'd like to add an associated question with this question, Adeel, specifically for you, and with the expertise of Sue, we can learn from it as well. If we are talking about the social circle, socializing our kids, then we have to opt the certain activities, just like you highlighted, Adeel, the swimming option or taekwondo option or karate option, where our kids can learn how to socialize with other and how to have a friendship circle, good friendship circle they have, and how to feel the competition out there. So it means the unschooling or homeschooling might increase the cost for the parents as compared to conventional schooling system. What do you say?
Sorry. Yeah, okay. The question is over. One funny thing. I mean, just coming back to my comment about my friend offering me some financial help. I actually told him that if you get your child, if you opt for homeschooling or unschooling, you actually end up spending more money on your child than the conventional school. And that's the reason being. See, what is the average fee of a decent school here in Karachi? It's around 20,000 per month. Maybe 22,000. Rizwan, you are a part of the movement against the very high private school fees here in Pakistan. So you know well about the fee that the children are. So when you take out this 20,000 rupee fee that you have, and you start investing it in your child's other activities, which may include education, which may include the extracurricular activities, it purely depends upon you. I mean, the more sugar that you will pick.
In the United States, you got to use the money for world travel instead of for school.
Absolutely, that's so true. And the best part, when coming to the travel, the best part of homeschooling is that you can travel off season as well, when you can find some very good deals, because there is no examination season per se. So when the whole world and the whole country is the children are giving examination, you can go on a holiday with your child and you can brag about it if you wish to. That's purely your call.
And the lines are shorter at the places to go. Yeah.
Oh. I think Adeel is out because of the same reason, the power outage. Yes, Sue, you continue with the answer. I think you have got my question.
Okay, I'm back with one.
There you are. Good.
The electricity, third world problems.
We thought you had a storm.
I think that the storm is over. Yeah. So I was just saying, there are costs associated with these activities. I think, but net, you are almost there. I wouldn't say. I would never ever take pride in that fact, saying that it is ending up. It's helping me save some more money. No, not at all. I would actually be more. I would prefer saying that I end up spending more money on my child homeschooling or unschooling, but he is enjoying his life more. I think we'll be prouder parents if that's the case. Yeah.
The only thing I would add is that I would like to tell parents that don't make a lot of money that they can do this too. That with a good internet connection, with good contacts in the community, your kids can have full, rich lives. And so sometimes when, like your friend that wanted you to send him to an expensive private school, sometimes that's a parental competition that's happening that we have to kind of be aware of. That are we trying to like, you know, I've known families who were very, very, they wanted to make sure everyone knew that their kid went to the most expensive school, that they saw that as like as a gold star for their parenting. And so we have to be aware of that a little bit. But I think that money, you know, you just start to move your money around a little bit. You might not have that boat. Instead, you might use it to go travel with your child, or instead your child wants to learn horseback riding, and so you spend it on horseback riding lessons, or you involve them in something that is a topic that they really, really like, and you just start to think about things outside the box. You know, it's not just we have our school and we have our vacation and that's it. Instead, it's like, how can we have the life we want to have? And maybe we don't have the biggest house in the neighborhood. Maybe we use that to do other things that allow us to have shared experiences with our children. And
it's a beautiful thought.
Data to help us see, oh, they really love this. Let's see if we can keep doing more of this. So I think, you know, money, it can go, you can do this no matter what.
Yeah, let's move forward to another question. In Pakistan, we all know we have a limited options for higher education. So in order to reach launching point to get higher education, we need good school. So question is specifically pertains to the degree or graduation, so that you can use it for the higher education as well. So as we discussed earlier, Sue, that there is a limited age slab that you can have homeschooling or unschooling. Any other comment you would like to add here?
I would add that when we have all been in school as adults, when we were children, we were in school, we're kind of on that conveyor belt of school where we think we've got to go to school to get more school, to get more school, to get more school. And it's not necessarily true. We're seeing a lot around the world of entrepreneurs who are figuring out things to make money in ways that don't even require college. So that may be horrifying to a lot of people, but there are a lot of careers that don't necessarily involve college. That being said, college doors don't close for kids that have had unconventional paths. In fact, many colleges really like kids that are unschooled, whether, you know, kids that really have had an opportunity to dive into a topic that they really love. They look like great applicants, as opposed to everybody else looks the same with their 3.9 GPA and their 2 leadership things and their 1 sports activity. It's all kind of a cookie cutter approach. Instead, then you have a kid that traveled and was an exchange student and can talk about cultural things, and they want to go to school and learn more about cultural things. They're like, we want that kid in our university because he's interesting and he knows what he wants. And from a college application standpoint, the college admissions office, all those cookie cutter kids that are coming from school, they're not necessarily all working out. They're sometimes, you know, they go to college and it's their first time away from home and they, you know, go wild. And so I think that the unschooled kids that then advance to a college because they want to explore a particular topic in more depth, colleges are much more likely to allow them in. We don't really see, I don't see colleges turning homeschoolers away. In fact, and now with the pandemic, everything's virtual anyway. You know, there's just a whole lot of ways to learn that don't include, you know, doors aren't closed. And I think that one of the things that was interesting, one of my kids went to high school for a year and a half, and when she left, they said, oh, but you had such potential, you could go to college. And she's like, why was everything they wanted for me to go to college? So I feel like there's an indoctrination that happens in the school system that more school, more school, more school. And we have an opportunity to say, hold up a second, maybe not. maybe maybe they need to travel a little bit. Maybe they need to work a little bit. Maybe they need to figure out who they are before they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on college.
Okay, thank you. So, would you like to add something, Adeel?
Yeah, I mean, I know where the context where Aneet is coming from, because there's so many misconceptions about this whole homeschooling thing, especially in Pakistan. But the good thing is that people aren't finally talking about that. I mean, this is the second consecutive Sunday evening that I'm spending having a discussion on the homeschooling thing. And Rizwan, we know that there's a parallel discussion which is going on as well about the homeschool. So, I mean, coming back to this question that he's saying, I mean, who said that you need to go to a particular school in order for you to get into a good university here in Pakistan? The universities in Pakistan are inducting you based on your the entrance test examinations result, one, based on your interview that you do, and I mean, who says? I mean, if you want your child to do this O and A level, if he wants to, I mean, he can do it in a private manner. In fact, I really
Exactly.
feel that children who are homeschooled can actually they can cover the curriculum. They can get these certifications. They can get these O and A levels done at a much faster rate than the children who are going to school and they are going through what I call the assembly line model. I mean, you don't need to be 19 to finish your A levels. If your child can finish his all A levels at the age of 16, he can appear in a university examination at the age 17. And being associated with a university myself, I can tell you that people sitting at universities are no stupid. They'll be more impressed, as Sue said. They're actually in Pakistan. They'll be more impressed if you've got good, if you've been homeschooled, you get good results in your board examination or your A levels, O levels, and you pass your university entrance examination, and there you are sitting in the interview, and you told them that I've never been to a school. I mean, I know this skill, that skill, blah blah. I can speak this language. I know how to ride a horse. I know how to swim. I'm a local district swimming champion and stuff. And they'll be more impressed. I mean, you make your decision, you make your admission into better universities even more. I would say the probability goes up rather than the run-of-the-mill resume that a typical child comes up with, who's done with his high school. So please just come out of this mindset that if he doesn't go to a school, he's not going to get admission at a good college. I think another myth that needs to be busted.
It's definitely a myth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next question is that's very important. I think that normally in it was earlier in Western culture, but now in Pakistan as well, Adeel, both father and mother have to
Yeah.
have something for earning. So it's very difficult to
Yeah.
have homeschooling in this scenario.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So,
said
so please carry on, please.
this is a legitimate concern. You know, this is a lot of people's situation, and it takes a
Yeah.
little bit of juggling. It takes creating a support system that can help you out. Whether you have grandparents that can maybe take them somewhere to do something, or you stagger the hours that you work with your spouse so that one works in the day and one works in the evening. And you realize that there's really just a small window when you're raising children. You know, they're only going to be under your care for a certain amount of time. And so if it's not ideal, you wish you could work the same hours as your spouse, so you might juggle it because your whole family unit needs a different scenario. And you might be able to find work from home, or you might be able to scale back on some of the things that you are spending money on. But really, it's about developing a support system that can help you out. So it's okay if you have a kid that sleeps until 11. So you go to work at 6, and then you come home at 2, and you don't, because all of the time thing can be whatever works for your family, whatever is natural. So you don't have to all be on an 8 to 5 kind of a setup. And so if you have to go to work, that's a good time for your kid to be sleeping. And then you come home and you do stuff with them until really late at night because you're not bound by a school schedule. So there's that.
Yeah, Adeel.
My point of view is that, I mean, I, and perhaps my wife as well, she would agree with what I'm saying here. I would ask if both the parents are working, both are having their jobs. I'll ask them to be and they are interested in homeschooling, I would definitely ask them to give it a second thought. I mean, it's not easy. At least one of the parents, whether it's the husband who decides I'm going to stay home and maybe take care of these things, or if it's normally in our culture, it's normally the wife that stays home and takes care of the education and all. And the wife herself has to have a certain level of education herself, maybe a certain level of maturity to go through that. So it's just not like I would say, I mean, see, if both the parents are working and they have decided that come what may, we are not going to send our children to school, they will figure out some way. I mean, as Sue said, that maybe take the help of the grandparents and all. It's all about your mindset. Once you have made up your mind, I'm going to do that. See, the Almighty has created human being as a very adaptable animal. I mean, he will just adapt to any situation. There are people from Pakistan who have settled in Saskatchewan in Canada. I mean, that's the place where only polar bears are supposed to live. But the Pakistanis from Karachi, which has got an average temperature of 40 degrees Celsius here in summer, they live there. I mean, they adapt there, and that's the beauty of being humans. Is that see that's how we are. So if the parents have decided, see, we want to. Okay, my wife works at a very big bank and she's a very senior position. She really can't quit her job. She will let go all the benefits that comes along. I work for a multinational company and I'm at a very senior position and blah blah whatnot. And but still we want to homeschool our kids. I'm pretty sure they will find out. They will figure out something. In a normal circumstance, however, I'll ask the parents to be extra careful about taking this thing up. If both of them are, I think the whole planning process actually doubles up the moment both the parents are working. So it's tough. It's tough, but definitely not impossible.
Right. And I would just add that as far as the parent that's staying home, often we think they have to be really, really educated. But in fact, they just have to be curious. They have to be willing to say, I don't know, let's find out. They have to be, like you said, mature enough to not see things defensively and instead just say, I don't know, let's learn it. And then they learn right alongside with it.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, Adeel, now जो question बहुत important है यहाँ पे कि how to start with unschooling.
Yeah, how to start? See, सबसे पहले आप अपने आप को समझाना शुरू कर दो. Start discussing it with your partner, with your wife, that see, this thought has come to my mind. Let me just see, this is not like I'm going to plunge it from tomorrow. Yes, that's a beautiful thought. I heard Sue talking about this and what a wonderful session that was. And okay, from tomorrow, I'm like taking my kids out of school. No. If I share my experience, I think me and my wife thought about this for almost 2 years. We thought about that when this idea came up, it was actually, I mean, it was just some incident. It was one of the sessions. In fact, I was there at one of the events where I heard a very senior gentleman from a very top university. He was not based in Pakistan, a Pakistani origin guy, and he was talking about the importance of STEM education. And he was talking about the fact that the way he was talking about the school curriculum and how the school curriculums are designed in a way that actually kill the creative instinct in the child. I mean, what your child wants to study and what the schools are making him study. So when I came back, I shared the whole experience with my wife, and I said, "See, I heard this gentleman speaking, and what he said made sense, absolute sense." And somehow we got his number, we contacted him. He was very kind. I mean, I think our first WhatsApp call with him was over an hour, maybe a 2 hour long. And we just keep on putting our questions, because remember I mentioned about my elder son, and there was this वो तशनगी वाला लफ्ज़ मैं फिर से इस्तेमाल करूँगा. I mean, we had those a lot of questions about the way he was being schooled, and we just felt that his talents that he has are being underutilized, and he's being made to study things that, being an autistic kid, being someone on the autistic spectrum, he would never ever be able to. His brain is not wired in a way that he'll be studying Shakespeare. No, he won't. And when he's studying for his examination, I mean, he's studying just 20% of the time for mathematics, and 80% is being given and make him learn Macbeth and read about Romeo and Juliet. He's not interested in that. So we had a very good discussion and conversation, and I think it took even a year after that conversation that we decided that now let's go ahead with that. We planned things out. I'm really not sure if we have been able to implement a lot of things that we planned, but we still not given up. I mean, of course, because of the lockdown thing and the COVID-19 and everything, a lot of activities that the children were doing, they had to be cut off. But hopefully, as things are getting better in Pakistan, alhamdulillah, I mean, things are surprisingly, I don't know why, there's some divine intervention that has happened in this country that that the coronavirus is going down. Otherwise, I really don't see any reason. I mean, people say, okay, there are fewer tests happening. Okay, fewer tests are happening, but where are those dead people who were supposed to be lying on the street? No, they're not there. The hospitals are almost empty now. So where have all the people? The virus is not playing havoc as it is doing in US right now. So now coming back, so we hope the activities will resume soon and the children will start going to the swimming pool and the stuff and the things that we're doing. We can have our own holiday pretty soon as well. So my recommendation is don't plunge into this. Where to start is to start planning for it slowly and gradually. It's like a drop falling on the stone. Like, I mean, it takes a while for it to create that hole, but eventually it does. So start spending time maybe on daily basis. What curriculum do you want to? You go online. There's so much stuff available online now. I think we are a very blessed generation that so much stuff is there. And secondly, there are so many forums in Pakistan now. In Karachi, we know about a couple of very, very active homeschooling forums where there are children play dates. There are book reading sessions that are taking place there. Ahmed, my eldest son, he got his obsession about this thing called Arduino, which is a mini computer sort of a thing, a circuit board sort of a thing. And he got that inspiration from a child who was being homeschooled. And I mean, I see Ahmed busy in his gadgets and his Arduino all the time. He's making those circuits and everything, and stuff appearing on the screen and stuff, and he's doing these codings and programming. And he got it from a homeschooling kid where he met at one of those sessions. So start investing time on that. Start planning for it. If you really feel that you are actually up for it, then go for it. Don't just go for it because you like a certain session, you like certain discussion, you got so motivated, you started hating school and stuff. No, give it some time, maybe a year, maybe more, and then plunge into this thing. That's my thought.
I think that some people come to it really quickly. I think that it resonates with them. They remember their own school experience, and suddenly they're like, this is what makes sense. Some people are more hesitant. Maybe they did really well in the school system, and letting some of that fall away takes a little longer. So that's why there's no formula. Some people can jump in. Some people have to take a lot of time and lay out the plan. But know that where you start isn't where you're going to end up. That it's all like this layers peeled away, and things that you thought you would never do. Next thing you know, you're doing it. Because something happened. That's just parenting, right? That's just, you have these ideas of the story you have in your head of how this is all going to play out, and then reality comes. Nobody expected COVID-19 to come. And suddenly you had to do this pivot, and so I think that sometimes when we plan for too long, sometimes we use that as almost a procrastination for taking action. So sometimes you might need to step towards what you think you need to do. But the helpful thing that I think is to always remember when you're talking with your kids and you're doing some shift, you're doing something new, is to say, this is an experiment. We're going to try this. And that kind of gives you a back door for when it's a disaster. You're like, all right, time out. We're not going to keep doing it like this. But if you say, this is an experiment we're going to try and see how late, you could stay up later, or you can really dive into your computer stuff, or we're going to buy, when COVID leaves, we're going to buy season tickets to the theater so that you can have exposure to that, or we're going to have a linguistics tutor come in and see how that goes, and then they get to They get to see what it's like to step towards goals, step towards your interests, fuel your strengths, as opposed to worrying about shoring up all of that other stuff that school says, oh, you're not good at this though. And so instead you get to move in that direction. And I would agree to read a lot, listen to a lot. There are a lot of TED Talks. Sir Ken Robinson talks a lot about creativity, and Peter Gray, he writes a lot for he's a researcher in the United States, and he talks a lot about how school is not necessarily the best way for our brains to learn. And he has done a lot of anthropological studies about how play is the way humans learn. Is that just like we start playing with things, and that's how it grows into some kind of a career. And so I think when you think about your kids' strengths and you think about ways to ask yourself why do I think this? And then anytime that you're making a decision out of fear, to dig down a little deeper, shine a little light on that, and see, what am I so afraid of? And find out, could it be ego-driven? Is it something that you are worried everybody's going to think I'm a terrible parent if I let him do this? Why do we care? If this is what I think is best for my child, then you remember, you are your child's advocate. You are all they've got. You are the one that can make sure they get what they need in their childhood. So if that means you got to do a little personal work to figure out, where all that overlap is, then do it. Read a lot. I have a website, unschoolingmomtomom.com, and then I have a coaching site that's patterson.com, and you can go to either of those and just start digging around in there. I have a lot of free materials and really inexpensive things and ways that people can understand and make that foundation a little bit stronger, because you are stepping off the conveyor belt. You have been spoon-fed everything for all of your life, really. And then all of a sudden you're responsible. The truth is, you were always responsible. It was always going to be your child. If they failed in school, they were going to live on your couch. When school was over, they didn't care anymore. Graduated, done, or dropped out, done. It's always been our responsibility as parents. Now we just have this opportunity to actually do something with that, instead of just cross our fingers and hope that school does the right thing. Instead, we're like, no, he really likes this. So let's try to do a little more of this. I don't care that you say you need Shakespeare. He's not into it right now. That doesn't mean he won't be into it in 3 years. But right now he's not. So let's go with what he where he wants to learn more.
Sure.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think it's already a pretty dragged session. 1 hour, 1.5 hours already gone. So let's conclude it here. Parents, होम स्कूलिंग या अनस्कूलिंग इतना आसान काम है नहीं. होम स्कूलिंग में आप एक सर्टेन पैटर्न फॉलो करते हैं, शायद कोई करिकुलम भी फॉलो करें, जो ऑनलाइन काफ़ी सारी सोर्सेज अवेलेबल हैं, वहाँ से आप करिकुलम ले सकते हैं और अपने बच्चे को उसी तरह से लेके चल सकते हैं. जिस तरह एक टीचर स्कूल में लेके चलता है, उस तरह पेरेंट्स टीचर्स का काम कर रहे होंगे और एक स्पेसिफिक करिकुलम को फॉलो करेंगे. और इसी तरह से आप बात करेंगे होम स्कूलिंग की. होम स्कूलिंग से हट के अगर हम बात करें, हम बात करते हैं फिर अनस्कूलिंग की. अनस्कूलिंग में आप किसी पर्टिकुलर करिकुलम को फॉलो नहीं कर रहे होते. फिर आप बच्चे के पैशन, बच्चे के आइडियाज़ को लेते हुए चलते हैं. बच्चा किस वक्त क्या चाह रहा है, उसका क्या इंटरेस्ट है, उसको लेते हुए चलते हैं. तो आप दोनों पैटर्न फॉलो कर सकते हैं, होम स्कूलिंग भी, अनस्कूलिंग भी. अभी हम इस पूरे डिस्कशन से सू पैटरसन वॉज काइंड इनफ, सो वॉज अदील अजहर. मिक्स एंड मैच भी चल सकता है होम स्कूलिंग और अनस्कूलिंग का, लेकिन पर्टिकुलर एज स्लैब भी है इसका. आप 2.5 साल से तो मैं कतन रिकमेंड नहीं करूंगा कि 2.5 साल से आप बच्चे को स्टार्ट कर दें इसमें. स्कूल भी हम आजकल भेजना शुरू कर देते हैं, बल्कि अब तो ये भी शुरू हो गया है कि एडमिशन से बच्चा पैदा ना हो उससे पहले ही एडमिशन ज़रूरी हो जाता है. कुछ स्कूल अब ये भी करना शुरू कर चुके हैं. तो इस पे फोकस ना करें. बच्चे की अपनी वैल्यूज़ होती हैं, अपने इंटरेस्ट होते हैं, वो उसको लेके चलता है. उसका जहन उस वक्त नशोनुमा में होता है, ग्रोथ लेवल पर होता है, और स्कूल भेजते हुए हम फिर इन सब बातों को भूल जाते हैं. तो 5-6 ईयर से पहले तो हम होम स्कूलिंग अनस्कूलिंग भी रिकमेंडेड नहीं है, और फिर इसको लेके चले तो आगे टीनेजर तक आप कम से कम कर सकते हैं। उसके बाद फिर जैसे हमने डिस्कस किया, पाकिस्तानी माहौल में भी अगर आप कैम्ब्रिज सिस्टम की तरफ जाते हैं तो OA लेवल्स प्राइवेटली करवाए जा सकते हैं, कोई ऐसा इशू नहीं है। इनफैक्ट अगर मैं स्कूल्स की बात करूं, स्कूल्स में पढ़ने वाले बच्चे भी ट्यूशंस ले रहे होते हैं, तो व्हाई नॉट गो फॉर ओनली ट्यूशंस, प्राइवेट करवाएं कैम्ब्रिज बच्चों को, और उसके बाद यूनिवर्सिटी कॉलेजेस में एडमिशन्स होंगे उसी तरह से। और अगर जो मैट्रिक सिस्टम की बात है तो उसमें मेरे ख्याल में ट्यूशंस पढ़वा के आप मैट्रिक किसी भी एक स्कूल को रजिस्ट्रेशन देने में कोई मसला नहीं है, कम से कम पाकिस्तानी स्कूल में आपसे सिर्फ उसमें शायद
Yeah.
1 साल की फीस पे करनी है। किसी भी नॉर्मल स्कूल से आप मैट्रिकुलेशन के लिए रजिस्ट्रेशन करवा सकते हैं और फिर अपेयर हो सकते हैं बोर्ड एग्जाम्स में। लेकिन ख्याल क्या रखना है कि हर कोई इस पे नहीं आ सकता। अगर आपका इंटरेस्ट डेवलप हो रहा है, यू शुड टेक टाइम, जिस तरह अदील ने सजेस्ट किया। अदील ने खुद 2 साल लगाए हैं इस में एंट्री देने में, तो आप भी इस पे टाइम लीजिए, सोचिए। सिर्फ अगर फादर मदर दोनों वर्किंग है तो फिर तो मैनेज करना ऑलमोस्ट पॉसिबल नहीं है, लेकिन अगर आप इस पे कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ कर सकते हैं कि वो वैल्यूज़ जो आप इंस्टिल करना चाह रहे हैं अपने बच्चों में, दोज वैल्यूज़ आर मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट दैन योर ओन जॉब। और अगर फादर सिर्फ अपने ब्रेड एंड बटर कर सकते हैं तो मेरे ख्याल में कोई इशू होना नहीं चाहिए। बट लेकिन ये सिर्फ आपकी अपनी प्रायोरिटीज़ है, अपना पैशन है और अपना इंटरेस्ट है। अगर आप देखते हैं आप इस पे काम कर सकते हैं तो ही आगे बढ़िए। इट इज़ नॉट दैट ईजी थिंग एज इट अपीयर्स, लेकिन नामुमकिन भी नहीं है। फिर उसके बाद उसके काफ़ी सारे बेनिफिट्स हैं, और जाहिर सी बात है उसमें डिसएडवांटेजेस हमने डिस्कस कर ही लिए। बेनिफिट्स में ये है कि आप जो वैल्यूज़ देना चाहते हैं बच्चों को, चाहे वो रिलीजियस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हो, चाहे वो सोसाइटी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हो, एथिक्स वैल्यूज़ हों, मोरल वैल्यूज़ हों, वो आप अपने लिहाज से बच्चों में इंस्टॉल कर सकते हैं। कंपटीशन की जहाँ तक हमने बात की, तो कंपटीशन हम उनको अदर एक्टिविटीज़ में स्कूल से हट के भी, अगर हम जैसे अदील ने बात की स्विमिंग की, इस तरह और भी कोचिंग क्लासेस होती हैं, कहीं स्पोर्ट्स एक्टिविटीज़ होती हैं, तो वहाँ स्पोर्ट्स डेवलप होगा। फिर इस तरह अगर लैंग्वेज स्किल्स लेना चाहें, लैंग्वेज डेवलप होगी और वहाँ पे कंपटीशन भी मिलेगा और सोशलाइजिंग भी मिलेगी ऑब्वियसली। यही 2 मेजर कंसर्न होते हैं पेरेंट्स के। और जहाँ तक एक्सपेंसेस की बात है, हाँ जी हाँ, हमने यही डिराइव किया है कि खर्चा ज़्यादा हो सकता है, लेकिन हमने सोचना यह है कि जो पैसा हम स्कूल में दे रहे हैं वो वर्थ करता है, या जो पैसा हम होम स्कूलिंग में खर्च करेंगे वो वर्थ करता है। ये बात ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है एज़ कम्पेयर टू आप इस पे फोकस करेंगे कि इस पे कितना ज़्यादा खर्चा हो रहा है। अगर 22,000, 20,000, 15,000 दे के भी आपको स्कूल से वो नहीं मिल रहा है जो आप चाह रहे हैं, तो फिर वो सारे के सारे वेस्टेज हैं। और अगर 15,000 के मुकाबले में 20,000 दे के आप होम स्कूलिंग में वो वैल्यूज़ इंस्टिल करवा रहे हैं, तो वो डिफरेंस सिर्फ 5,000 का है। तो 5,000 से आपको रिटर्न में क्या मिल रहा है, दैट इज़ मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट। तो ये सेशन पहला सेशन था। फिर मैं बता दूं, Sue Patterson was kind enough. Thank you very much for your expertise, your expert thoughts, Sue. And we will again try to take you on board for other sessions. Obviously, as I told you, we will be having some education related and parenting related sessions in future as well. So I think you will be kind enough to join those sessions as well.
I would love to. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. सर, जहाँ तक इस होम स्कूलिंग सेशन की बात है, हम इस पे अगला एक और सेशन करेंगे इसी यूट्यूब चैनल पे, वेरी आर मीकम पे, रिजवान अली मेरे साथ। और वो स्पेसिफिकली होगा सिर्फ पाकिस्तान में जो पेरेंट्स होम स्कूलिंग कर रहे हैं उनके लिए। और उसमें सारे पेरेंट्स ऐसे मौजूद होंगे, बल्कि एक तो मेरे पास फैमिली ऐसी भी मौजूद है जिनके पेरेंट्स भी होम स्कूलर हैं एंड दे आर इंजीनियरिंग ग्रेजुएट्स, went to USA, came back to Pakistan, doing good job and a big company here as well. तो उन्होंने खुद भी होम स्कूलिंग किया और वो बच्चों की होम स्कूलिंग कर रहे हैं। फिर हमारे पास ऐसी फैमिली भी हो सकती है जिनके 4 साल से लेके 22 साल तक के बच्चे हैं और वो सारे के सारे होम स्कूलर्स हैं। और होपफुली डॉक्टर सूबिया जो क्लिनिकल साइकोलॉजिस्ट हैं, आज हमें ज्वाइन नहीं कर सकी, नेक्स्ट सेशन में ज्वाइन करेंगे। होपफुली ये पावर आउटेजेस नेक्स्ट टाइम ना हो और हम एक टाइमली और एक अच्छा सेशन अपने कंप्लीट गेस्ट के साथ कर सकें। थैंक यू वेरी मच सू, योर लास्ट थॉट प्लीज।
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, Adeel.
Thank you, Rizwan. Thank you so much, Rizwan. I mean, always nice sharing my experience, and good to hear from Sue. And Sue, I'll definitely be in touch with you, me and my wife. My wife, who's watching this program there in the living room, will definitely get in touch whenever, because we can learn a lot from you and from your experience. And I've been just seeing your website throughout. I've been distracted by this, and I find it. I mean, I've actually kept the tab open because that's something I'll definitely go through in detail tomorrow in my office. So thank you so much for sharing all your learnings with us. Thank you, Rizwan, for inviting me. It was very nice having you here. having been
Thank you
here.
very much. Thank you, Sue.
Well,
Thank you,
thanks for
parents,
having
for
me.
joining
I
us. Thank you.
appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Allah Hafiz.
Okay.
Yeah.